Welcome to Sunrise with Sarah. It's me, Sarah. How you doing today? If you're new to the show, welcome. It's so great to meet you kind of ish through this medium. And if you're a returning listener, love you. You already know that. Thanks for being here. This is a podcast about connection, growth, and wholehearted living. Every week, every Monday specifically, we bring you episodes that are either solo episodes like the one today, which we haven't done in a while, or interviews. And our interviews are with people who are movers and shakers in empowerment, risk taking, entrepreneurship, relationships, money, etc., etc. Pretty broad, but really powerful people. Um, Before we hop into the episode today, I like to start with a disclaimer that I'm growing too. I'm a person in progress. I'm learning just as much as you are. So just keep that in mind that when I'm giving you advice, it's not because I'm an expert, because I'm not. I'm a friend just chatting with you about life stuff and things that have been on my mind. And I'm hopeful that my reflections can help you in the future. So, before we dive into our topic of everyday addictions, I have a couple of things to share, some clerical stuff. One, the 28 days of joy is completed. Today, or I'm recording this on the 28th, but y'all are going to listen to this on March 1st, maybe. But for today, today's the last day of the 28 days of joy. Thank you so much for everyone who has either shot me a DM saying like I love this, or I know of a couple people who are starting their own 28 days of joy challenges, which is so cool. This has been a really cool way for me to make it through February, which has historically been a stressful and kind of hard month for me. And some learnings that I got from it is that outside of hanging with friends and family or FaceTiming people that I love, some things that are go tos for me for that create joy are cooking, dancing, being outside, and taking time to pamper myself, which is a cool learning. I didn't expect cooking to be on there, but it did bring me a lot of joy this past month. So I'm excited to go back to those posts in the future if I'm ever in a funk to be like, to give myself some thought starters as to what I can do to bring myself some joy. The other thing that I want to share, which is kind of an announcement, is that you might not be able to tell. No, you can't tell in the YouTube video, but you might not be able to tell there. But my apartment is filled with boxes, and that's because Ben and I are moving on Saturday. Ooh, ooh. We both have remote jobs, so we're going to be spending the next several months in Airbnbs, which is really cool. We're going to spend a couple months in the Seattle area, in Airbnbs, 1 month at each spot. And then we're going to travel outside of state for a little bit. We're going to hit Arizona. We're going to hit Colorado. We're going to hit Wyoming. And I'm just really excited for it. Like this, it's a little bit out of my comfort zone because I like routine. I like to feel grounded. I like to, feel like I'm in a routine. So this is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm like so excited to explore. So I want to share that with y'all that as I'm recording these episodes, I'm going to be all over the damn place. And I can share you some fun insights along the way as well. If you want to follow along with this journey, I will be posting a little bit on my personal Instagram at sarah.eckhart if you don't already follow me there. I say a little bit because Instagram does not come super naturally to me. So, but I will post at least one per place we are of like a recap of everything that went down. So if you want to check that out, head on over to at sarah.eckhart on Instagram. Okay, that's it. Clerical stuff is done. Sip of water. So today's topic is everyday addictions. I've read a couple books in the past month or two that kind of touched on this in different ways. And I was like, why don't I just take the insights, mash them together, add my own personal thoughts, and throw it in an episode. So this is what that is. So you might be listening and think like, I don't deal with addiction, thinking that addiction is just alcoholism or, drug addiction. But the couple of books that I read recently, in my personal opinion as well, is that we all kind of deal with addictions on our own, even though they might not be chronic and might not be incredibly destructive to our livelihood. Um, but we still lean on certain things as a crutch to get us through tough times. So let's start with some definitions. These come from Merriam Webster. First definition of addiction is a compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need for a habit forming substance, behavior, or activity having harmful physical, psychological, or social effects and typically causing well defined symptoms such as anxiety, irritability, tremors, or nausea upon withdrawal. So that is more so talking about like the chronic, alcoholism, drug addiction type of stuff. The second definition is a strong inclination to do, use, or indulge in something repeatedly. So the two books that I read are kind of combining the two definitions, but mostly focusing on the second. Like people, like when we have like a strong inclination to do something, when X happens in our lives, X typically meaning discomfort. So, the first book that I read that talked about this was Brene Brown's Daring Greatly. And Brene calls us to broaden our definition of taking the edge off and basically says that we all have our own set of numbing strategies for and she also says in a blog post which I'll link below is that many of us have a poo-poo platter of addiction, so we aren't hard on any one addiction, but we have like a bunch of little things that we dabble in to help like take the edge off of our lives. Some examples that Brene talks about is drinking, smoking, sugar, controlling, interesting one, being crazy busy, interesting one. And that's for her personally, like she had in the past has taken from each one of those, like a little bit of drinking, a little bit of smoking, a little bit of controlling her family, a little bit of let me just take on way too many projects as a way of numbing herself. Those are her addictions. The second book that I read was Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. And he refers to this everyday addiction as moderate behavioral addiction. So it's not like extreme or chronic, it's just a moderate behavioral addiction. He points to the most common form of numbing strategies nowadays, looking at our phones, looking at technology, such as an addiction to a moderate behavioral addiction to YouTube, to podcasts, to checking your Instagram for likes. He actually says that checking likes is the new smoking. This was published a few years ago, so keep that in mind. Like he doesn't even refer to TikTok in this book, but and I do agree with that. Like it's really hard to when you post something to not check 5 times that day to see how many likes you get, which is just so weird. We'll dive into that a little bit more. So let's talk about first phones used as a crutch. So let's first talk about the quick glance. Cal writes on page 47 of Digital Minimalism, at the slightest hint of boredom, you can now surreptitiously glance at any number of apps or mobile adapted websites that have been optimized to provide you an immediate, satisfying dose of input from other minds. So basically, what he's saying is like, whenever we're bored, uncomfortable, whatever, we can just ostrich our head into our phones to just like get a quick hit of dopamine or input. If you don't think you do this, you probs do. And I'll tell you a few reasons. I see this a lot I live in a building that has an elevator. I see this a lot with people in the elevator, and I'm really conscious of it, which is why I actively try not to do it. But I see so many folks do this. You get into an elevator, let's just say we're going up 5 floors, and it takes approximately 5 seconds. People walk into the elevator with you, 6 feet distance, wearing a mask, of course, because we're in COVID times. And they take out their phone and immediately just start like clicking around for like the 5 seconds and then lock their phone and then get off the elevator. We have 5 seconds in the elevator. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what can we accomplish in the elevator for those 5 seconds? I see this for pretty much everyone. And my reasoning behind it, or the way that I'm seeing it, is just being in the elevator with someone can be uncomfortable. It's like, do I talk to this person? Do I look them in the eye? Do I just stare at the corner and pretend that they don't exist? Don't pretend, yeah, don't even pretend that you haven't done that before. Um, and the easiest way out is through your phone. The easiest way out of that uncomfortable interaction is to whip out your phone and look at it and be like, "Oh, look, I'm doing stuff, so I can't deal with that. What do I do in this social situation type of thing." That's one. Krista Williams, who is a host of the Almost 30 podcast, she calls her phone like the cozy. And what she talks about, she lived in New York City for a while, is that like a homeless person gets on the subway and everybody just whips out their phone and just starts looking at it because it's uncomfortable. Again, you have those questions. You're like, do I talk to them? Do I smile at them? Like, they're probably going to ask me for money. Like, I'm feel weird. Do I give them money? You have all of these social anxiety questions, and it's just way easier to just, oh, I'm so busy. Let me look at my phone, that type of thing. The third thing that the third way that we use this quick glance or just like tapping around our phone aimlessly is something that sticks out to me is when you're on a date or waiting for friends. So remember dates, remember going out to a restaurant? Lol. So um, you are on a date with somebody. Perhaps it's like a fresh relationship, even. Your date goes to the bathroom. What do you do? I I think my first reaction is to like dig into my first purse and check my phone. And I've seen that so many folks do that. And it's just like that weird, what do I do with myself right now? Like I'm not being entertained or like stimulated or like talking to someone. So the first thing that we do, instead of just sitting quietly, like looking around the restaurant, being curious about the world that you're in, you just like grab your phone and you check. I see that all the time. Personal story. So I'm super conscious of that. And in my adult life, like post college, like I made a rule that if my date, who's, Ben, um, if he went to the bathroom, I was like, I'm not checking my phone because I need to overcome this like discomfort of like, what do I do with my hands? Um, I first became aware of this in college when I would, you go to the cafeteria with your friends and you're the first one down at the table and everyone else is still getting their food. And it feels fucking awkward to be the first one at the table because you're like, do I eat? Do I not eat? Oh my God, everyone around here is going to think I have no friends. Oh my God, what the fuck? Why are they taking so long? Like, why are you going to another line? Those types of things go through your head. So, the easiest thing to do would be to whip out my phone and be like, typing around, like, oh, yep, so busy. Or to prove to the people around me who I think are judging me for having no friends, be like, see, look at me having all of these friends on my phone right now. I'm not alone. Ha. So I like realized that was something that I did, which I thought was hilarious. So I started making myself like while waiting for friends, I'm like, don't touch your phone. You can do this. And it's hard. It really is hard. So that's where like phones can be numbing. And I guarantee all of us have done at least one of these, but probably all of them. Some other examples of like everyday numbing that are pretty near and dear to my heart. One is what Brene Brown mentioned in her book is being crazy busy. Oh, Lordy. I'm someone who takes on a lot of projects, this podcast included. And something that I'm really working on is trying to identify why I'm taking on a project and whether or not it's just to fill time or if it's something that I genuinely want to do. This podcast, it took me like 6 months to actually move forward with it because I was just grappling with that question. Like, am I just taking this on because it's COVID and I have time and I'm a little bored and I just need to like cram my life? Or is this something that I genuinely want to do? I think could be helpful, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, being crazy busy near and dear to my heart. Currently, my new thing is making these cookie dough balls, which are fucking delicious. It's just like cashew butter, honey, like almond flour, chocolate chips, whatever, whatever. Not horrible for you, but still cookie dough balls. That has been my go-to when I like am procrastinating something. If I'm like, okay, time to sit down and start this big project at work. And I'm like, oh, sorry, can't, got to make a cookie dough ball. And I'll go make a cookie dough ball. Takes like 10 minutes. And I sit down and I'm like, oh, okay. Now I can start doing this. I use cookie dough balls to procrastinate. I also use cookie dough balls when I'm tired because, you know, sugar helps. Sugar is so much more appealing when you're tired. Another thing that I do is I listen to podcasts and I watch YouTube videos, and the addiction, quote unquote, that I have and I'm breaking right now, which is really cool, is having to listen to something when I go on a walk. I like need I've felt the need to have an input. I'm like, well, I need to listen to a podcast, or I need to listen to an audiobook, or I need to listen to music. Like I always bring my headphones with me on a walk, and it's just like something that I do. I like feel addicted to needing to have an input when I go for a walk, which is kind of weird. But it's not that weird because I'm sure a lot of people do that. So you might be thinking like, okay, well, like a lot of these things can be like really indulgent. Like, what's wrong with watching a YouTube video? What's wrong with eating a cookie dough ball? Nothing really. Um, and that's where I'm going to talk about the difference between indulgence and numbing. So Brene Brown like points out in her book that there is a big difference between indulgence and numbing. And on a personal note, and I've said this in previous episodes, I truly believe it to its core that everything and every behavior, not every, whatever, most things, most behaviors are fine or agnostic. And it's our relationship to those things and how we use those things that determine whether or not it's good or bad. So here's an example of indulgence versus numbing. Indulgence, you sit down, you have a beautiful dinner, you have, soup to nuts. I don't think that phrase is really applicable nowadays, but like you get the appetizer, you have dessert, it's just fun. Like you can either be with people or by yourself, but it's just like an indulgent thing. That is indulgence. Numbing is taking a chocolate bar, you're standing over your sink with a chocolate bar, shoving it in your face, and you kind of like have a blackout moment where you don't even really know what happened and you didn't really taste it, and then it's over. And then you're like, okay, what the fuck? That is numbing. And that's some shit that I've done with some cookie dough balls, let me tell you. So, why is numbing bad? When we are numbing, it's basically like a way to self-soothe uncomfortable situations, whether we're avoiding something, procrastinating, feel uncomfortable, like social discomfort, social anxiety, or just are stressed. It's our way of just like trying to self-soothe. But when we numb uncomfortable situations, like that's like a really integral part of being human. And by numbing ourselves, we're kind of bubble wrapping ourselves instead of overcoming stuff. So when you force yourself to do an uncomfortable thing, like I'm not going to check my phone in the elevator, you build confidence in that. Like you leave the elevator and you're like, fuck yeah, I can endure uncomfortable things. If we only numb and we choose to numb every time, we don't build that confidence of knowing like, I am my own great company. I'm enough. I can do difficult things, uncomfortable things, et cetera, et cetera. Numbing prevents us from that personal growth. In Brene Brown's work, when she says that when we numb pain, we also numb joy. And she says that we can't selectively numb. I'm going to repeat that. We can't selectively numb. So, in order for us to feel joy, we also need to feel pain. We also need to feel discomfort. And I don't think any of us want to be numbing joy in our lives. And then the third thing about numbing, and this is my own personal flavor, is that it doesn't really solve anything. Like, your issues are still there after you do the numbing. And I knew that with like alcohol. I know some people after they go through a breakup, they'll just like drink a lot. And I would look at that and I'd be like, well, that doesn't like really solve the fact that you're heartbroken. Like, you're still going to be heartbroken tomorrow, but you're also going to feel like shit. So, sage advice there. But then again, I have a project to do at work and I'm like, oh, sorry, got to have 5 cookie dough balls. See you in a half hour. Like, that's what I do. We all have our own flavor of it. So numbing is bad. We're taking away an integral part of being human, and we're removing our ability to build confidence. We can't selectively numb, and numbing doesn't actually solve anything. It just kind of like pushes it down, kicks the can down the road. So what can we do about it? So I have a few ideas as to what we can do about this. And the first one is awareness and reflection. So get to know yourself. Like, start asking your questions like, what are your triggers? Like, what are your everyday addictions? What do you do when you're at a stoplight? Do you immediately like reach over for your phone and be like, oh, is there a text for me to respond to? Like, what do you do at a stoplight? Good question. What do you do? What do you do when you're in an elevator? What do you do? I mean, if you are in elevators these days, what do you do when you're avoiding something or procrastinating? What do you do when you're bored, etc.? And also, like, start to get to know your signs. Like, maybe eating standing up is a good indicator that you're numbing instead of indulging, or maybe you're just like spending 20 minutes scrolling through Instagram. Like, just that could be a sign like, oh fuck, I'm numbing. So then that leads to like, once you kind of know your signs, and if you are able to catch yourself, and that's like another hard thing. It's like, once you're like, oh, okay, like I eat sugar when I'm stressed. When you're stressed, it's really fucking hard to notice, like, I'm only eating this sugar because I'm stressed. Like, that is like, it's really hard to pull yourself out of the situation and just look at it. But if you are able to catch yourself, and that's just, that takes practice. I like to ask myself, like, what's still going to be there after XX numbing thing? So what's still going to be there after the cookie dough ball? Like, oh, I am going to have this hard conversation, or I'm going to have to start in on this project that I feel a little bit overwhelmed about, or I have to vacuum, like, that's what's after the cookie dough ball. Because that will help you determine, like, okay, what's the thing that I need to do? The third thing, after you're able to catch yourself and kind of identify what the fuck is going on and like why you're doing it, is to choose the courageous thing and choose to feel uncomfortable. And you might be like, why the fuck would I want to be uncomfortable? And as I said, like, that's what builds confidence in you. That's what makes you resilient to discomfort, is if you put yourself through discomfort and prove to yourself that you can overcome it. So something that I've been doing is I've been leaving my headphones behind when I go for a walk. And if I feel anxious about it, because sometimes I do, I'm like, well, what the, like, I just, I'm like, well, what if I need to listen to something, silly stuff. I have a mantra that I'm using that says, I am great company. I am great company. I don't need to listen to a podcast or to music or anything. I'm great company. And I just go for a walk for an hour with my own fucking thoughts. Imagine that. Ideally, I'd like to leave my phone behind, but I still have that like fear in my brain of like, well, what if an emergency happens? So still working through that, but leaving the headphones behind has been huge for me. 2, Don't check your phone when you're in the elevator. That's another rule I have for myself. No checking of phones in the elevator. You can wait the 5-10 seconds and then you can check it out of the elevator. But you are going to have to stand in an elevator with another human being and try to negotiate that social situation and figure it the fuck out. 3 is breathe while waiting for friends, or breathe while waiting for your date to come back from the bathroom. As I mentioned before, like that's a rule I have for myself. So if Ben goes to the bathroom while we're on a date, I just don't look at my phone. I look around. I have some water. I start to notice like the music that's playing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I start to understand like the vibe of the place. Like, oh, that's really cool artwork. Just start to like get a little curious about your surroundings, perhaps, and just breathe through it and just be like, wow, I really want to check my phone right now, but I'm not going to fucking do it because I'm building motherfucking confidence. Okay. And then the last thing is really like celebrate your win. Like, as I just said, I'm building motherfucking confidence. Like, I am so fucking pumped up when I leave my headphones behind. I'm like, fuck yeah. Fuck you, headphones. I don't need you. I'm great motherfucking company. But, but just celebrate your wins. If you don't check your phone in the elevator, just be like, yeah. Like, don't. I know it seems silly because these seem like small things, but they're big things. It's a small, in a vacuum, it's a small thing, but in the macro, like as a habit, these are big things that we're overcoming. And that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope it was uplifting and, kind of made you think about things that you do. Like, as I said, we all do them. And we can live a much more like wholehearted, confident life, resilient life if we start to take on these addictions. So that's it, folks. If you are on Apple Podcasts, I would love it if you hit subscribe and left me a review. It takes like 5 seconds to leave a review, and it makes a huge difference for my pod. Same thing with Spotify. Hit that follow button. YouTube, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And probably the biggest way and the best way to help is to send this episode to a few friends that you think it might be helpful to. That would be like the best. The intro outro music to this podcast is by Matt McGee. And next week I have my friend Alejandra on. We're going to talk about a concept that we came up with called cool girlfriending. I say that with air quotes, and I really think you'll enjoy it. So I'll talk to you next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.